What is up, warriors, and welcome back to another video. Today I've got the much requested press to handstand tutorial, updated newest version. I presume if you clicked on this video you may have watched the first one, which was a little bit of a different take to what I'm going to go in today's video. The first one I kind of presented a bunch of different progressions that you can use in the attempt that if you work up you might get your pressed handstand. Suffice to say that my opinion has changed a little bit over the years, and through coaching people, through understanding more about training, I've kind of just figured out things that work well, things that don't work well. And in today's video, I want to present you a refinement of that original tutorial. I don't want to give you all the endless different progressions and variations. I just want to give you the stuff that works. That's kind of what I'm focused on here. I'm not by any means saying that this is the only way to develop a pressed handstand, but just in my experience, when we're talking about most people, I think this will work well. Anyway, enough rambling. Let's talk about the requirements, the things you need to have in place before you should start training your pressed handstand. There's two basic requirements that I think most people should have, and that is number one, being able to balance the handstand consistently for 10 to 15 seconds. The reason I say consistently is because a lot of the drills do require an element of balance. And if we're not consistent, we're not good with our balance, it's gonna make our practice of the pressed handstand inconsistent and just kind of frustrating. So really, if you can't balance handstand, you probably should be working on that first. And if you are working on that, I'll link below to my full how to do a handstand tutorial, as well as some other videos that I have on balancing the handstand to get you started in the right direction. Secondly, I would recommend that people have a reasonable tuck handstand. The reason for this is that if you have a good tuck handstand, it likely means that number one, you have decent shoulder flexibility. Number two, you have some strength in your traps, because that is what the tuck handstand focuses on. And number three, you're used to moving your legs about in handstand, which again is a component of doing the press to handstand. Again, if you haven't been able to do this one or you haven't trained this before, I will link to my tuck tutorial breakdown in the description down below. Basically, make sure those are both good and you're gonna have no problem beginning to train your pressed handstand. Presuming those two are in place, let's look at the next important kind of concept when it comes to the press, and that is the difference between strength and flexibility. The pressed handstand is a strength move. It's not a flexibility move, it is a strength move. If you want to get the press, you need to get stronger, regardless of your level of flexibility. That being said, there is an inverse relationship between flexibility and strength. The more flexibility you have, the less strength you will require, but there will still be a baseline level of strength that you must have, and you cannot get around that with more flexibility. A great example of this is my personal first ever pressed handstand. As you can see, I don't have very good flexibility, but I do have strength, and that's why I am able to negotiate that press, albeit unrefined, but gradually over the years, as my flexibility developed alongside my press, you will see that the efficiency of that press also improved. And that's how I've been able to get to the point at which I can do 5 shoulder presses. Whereas if I'd have kept the same flexibility that I had beforehand, ultimately I'd have been limited. In short, flexibility, yes, but also strength needs to be our main focus. So with that out the way, let's look at training the press to handstand. I'm going to start with some preparation, some drills that are going to help you get towards working on your pressed handstand. If you don't quite meet those requirements I set out to begin with, this is the sort of thing that you can also start adding at the end of your sessions a couple of times a week to help prepare the shoulders and strengthen things up so that you can get there. The first part of the preparation I want to just briefly touch on is flexibility. I'm not going to spend too much time here because I have so many videos on YouTube already that I'm just going to link to, but essentially there's a couple of key ranges of motion that we need to develop for the pressed handstand. Number one is the pancake or pike flexibility. Essentially, most people are going to do straddle first, then pike, so I would recommend working on your pancake and your pike flexibility. I'm just going to be lazy here. I will link below to full tutorials for both the pancake and pike, as well as follow-alongs for the pancake and pike. So if you're stuck, you can just get going. The second one is overhead flexibility. As I kind of alluded to with the tuck handstand, having good overhead flexibility will make your press more efficient, and it is very important. Again, I'll just link to a follow along and a tutorial that I have on both of those. If you do want to go away and apply this flexibility, start working on it, you definitely should be if it isn't a strong point for you. As I said, it will just make life a hell of a lot easier when it comes to the pressed handstand. I would recommend doing your flexibility work twice per week, nice and simple. If you're doing the lower body stuff, the pancake, the pike, I would do that before you do your press training. This way, that opens up that range of motion, it improves your press training session. For the overhead flexibility, I would maybe do a little bit beforehand, but I wouldn't do too much because it can affect your strength and coordination. Right, let's take a look at the actual drills for the press to handstand. As I kind of mentioned with the tuck handstand, the traps are significant importance when it comes to the press. When we're in handstand, the traps basically become the glutes of the upper body when we're standing on our hands. They are significantly important for stabilizing the shoulders, but also being a primary role in strengthening and performing a lot of these movements. We need to strengthen the traps and we need to build capacity in the traps. And I have two drills that are going to be perfect for building that capacity. Number one is the support pike slides. Now this one I've shared in another video, so I'll link to some more detail on it below. But essentially this drill is useful for first understanding upward rotation of the scapula, which is essential for any overhead pressing movement and just understanding how the arms should be overhead. It is also very essential for teaching one of the fundamentals of press to handstand that is so hard, and that is trying to push in shoulder flexion whilst trying to pull the hips into flexion. Most of the time our body likes to do either global extension, so think of like sprinting, when we lift the arms overhead we also want to extend through the back, and then global flexion, which is kind of bringing yourself into that fetal position. This works nicely with the body understands that. However, in the pressed handstand and the tuck handstand, we have two contradictory matters going on. We have that extension through the spine, we have the arms overhead, but then we also have the legs tucking down. This can inhibit your strength, which is partly why the press becomes so challenging, as well as the tuck handstand. We just actually need to understand how to push through the shoulders and pull through the hips at the same time, which is partly why the tuck is useful, but also why this drill is so effective. When pulling our legs in, we also want to think about pushing up as tall as possible through the shoulders, maximal elevation, feeling like we're loading the traps and we're trying to be as light as possible on the feet during this drill. We're going to pause in that top position for a few seconds, try to push nice and tall through the shoulders, feel the traps working, and then repeat. The great thing about this drill is simply that you can get reps in, and reps is what is important initially for building that capacity. This I would say is kind of the bottom range of the press. The second drill I would recommend is going to help a little bit more with that top range, and that is a handstand trap 3 raise. The trap 3 raise is a weight training exercise in which we train the mid to lower traps. It's a very, very good exercise, but we want a little bit more specificity when we're talking about handstands. So for this one, we're going to perform a similar range of motion in the handstand. Now, I personally like doing this one back to wall, can also do it chest to wall, but essentially we're going to try and work on breaking the shoulder line and then pushing back using the traps to go back to straight. The further from the wall you are, the harder this drill becomes because you have to lean that much more into kind of what ends up being more of a planche position. The key to this one is understanding control. We want to lower nice and slowly and let our shoulders be the first touching point onto the wall. We then hold for a second and then we push back off. Again, trying to focus on using the traps to push through, open the shoulders back up to that straight position. Again, the nice one about this is that we can do it for reps and it's a bit scalable. We can have the hands close to the wall and then we can start moving them further out as we get stronger, just kind of like the first drill. Something to think about here again is that standard handstand cue of pushing harder, pushing taller through the shoulders. As we lower the shoulders to the wall, it's common for the shoulders to begin to shrug down. We want to make sure that we're trying to keep that push up all the way throughout this movement. So both of these drills, it's all about building capacity, building strength in the traps. You can kind of perform this one for 3 to 4 sets for about 4 to 8 repetitions, maybe more if you can do. But again, this is about building capacity in the shoulders. So we want to train it like we would training strength. So doing this a couple of times a week, choosing one or maybe even both of the exercises and doing it at the end of your handstand sessions. It's a nice simple way to add it in. You can also combine this with some of that earlier pancake, pike flexibility work, and it's going to give you a nice preparation for developing your press. Next, we move on to the bread and butter of press training. And again, I've actually got 2 drills for you here. There is loads of drills out there, but for me personally, there's 2 drills that I find work time and time again to develop consistent and predictable results. The first of those drills is the negative. Now, this is the thing that I will introduce to people to begin with. The reason negative is nice is for 2 reasons. Number 1, you're stronger in negative. You're about 120, 140% stronger, which means you're going to be able to control a little bit further than if we're just trying to lift up. And number 2 as well is it teaches you the pattern of the pressed handstand, just as much as a skill as it is a strength move. And understanding how to properly articulate yourself in the press is crucial to be able to develop it. These negatives want to last for about 10 to 15 seconds. We want to really slow things down, during which the focus is to kind of avoid breaking the shoulders as late as possible. And we want to keep pulling the legs down, keeping the legs tight to the body until we get to the point in which we can feel ourselves that we can't quite manage to hold ourselves in that position. Here, we're going to try and pause for a few seconds and then keep lowering until we cannot control it any further and come down to the floor. That is 1 rep done. Gradually over time doing this drill, we're gonna see our control being able to go lower and lower and lower. Ideally working up towards being able to control all the way to the ground with nice and control. You probably will be able to do this before you can actually get the press itself, but that's a natural progression. The second drill I have for you is kind of matching up the opposite to this movement, and that is the box press. Now, you've probably seen the box press done before, but I've got a couple of cues which I think will help you put this into better context. And as I said, this video is about applying. I've also got some advice on how you can go about training it to get better results out of it. The box press is basically just reducing the range of motion for our pressed handstand. The pressed handstand gets harder the lower down we go. So using a block just to get to the point at which we can lift our feet off, we can adjust and scale the pressed handstand and then gradually lower that height until eventually, hopefully, we get to the floor. There's a couple of keys to getting the most out of this drill. Number one is absolutely no jumping. If you are having to jump with the feet, it is not a press, it is a jump into handstand. And likelihood just means that you're having the surface too low. If we're gonna press the handstand, we wanna think about the handstand starting from the shoulders. Our shoulders are controlling this movement and lifting our legs up. Number two, we wanna focus on getting the hips over first. We wanna think about starting the box press by somebody pulling our hips over the shoulders, pushing up nice and tall through the shoulders, and then from there pressing and trying to lift the feet off. If we try to lift the feet off from a position where the hip height is low, it's going to require much more strength and it's just going to be fighting against us creating an efficient press. So think about the hips dragging first, then the feet lifting. Finally, I would recommend trying to control the whole movement if you can, including the negative back down onto the box. A lot of people here will just try to press up, then the momentum will take them, they'll fall out of handstand, and then they kind of repeat that. As I said earlier, that negative is an important aspect of training, and just trying to understand how to control the momentum and the movement of press is key. And these are basically the drills that I think consistently work. And you're probably thinking, I've seen this before. Why am I watching this tutorial? This is the same stuff over and over again. And if you're thinking about that way, the likelihood is you haven't put the time and consistency into these drills to really see the results. And that's what I want to talk about in today's video. Because I'm not going to lie to you, the press will take you time to develop. It is not an easy skill. It's a hard skill and it is a weird kind of strength. We need time and consistency with both the press negatives and also the box press. These aren't progressions. You don't go from the negative to the box press. You probably want to train both at the same time to get results out of it. The negatives is going to allow you to start training deeper and deeper into the press, and the box press is going to help you understand how to get that lift and train the range and get more reps. And in much the same way, the first two drills was about accumulating strength in the traps. The second two drills is just about accumulating strength in the press and understanding the press better. Initially, when you're training, it's going to be good just to be able to do one rep of either the press negative or the box press. That is good in and of itself. So it's very hard to train this with enough volume. As I said, this is a strength move, so I'd recommend looking at the strength training literature to determine how many reps to do. If we're thinking about strength training, kind of 10 to 25 reps per session is a good amount of volume. So we can do this in singles, each session trying to get 10 to 20 repetitions of negatives and box presses, a mixture of the two or one or the other. First of all, as single reps, and then working to build that up into 2s and 3s and 4s and 5s is going to be fundamental for you building up the strength to do the press to handstand. And with this volume means that we don't want to be training this too often. As I've said before, this is a strength move. We want to train it like a strength move. 2 times per week with that volume is going to be more than enough to make good results. If we do it too often, there's just going to be too much fatigue in the traps, and you don't really need to train it that often. It is, as I said, it's a strength move. Train it like it. Now, in theory, you should be able to get the pressed handstand from these drills. Given enough time, given enough consistency of actually doing the work, I feel pretty confident that most people can achieve this, although, as I said, it is a complicated move, and sometimes there are some individual things that need to be worked on and need to be focused on to actually develop it properly. If you are stuck, you can of course spend your time scouring the internet. This is how I learned myself. Ultimately, if you just want to do the press and be able to get it, sometimes paying for this information, finding a coach, there is plenty of great coaches out there who are going to help you with this. Or the program that I would recommend is the one by Handstand Factory. They have a great pressed handstand program. Full disclosure, I'm good friends with Emmett and Mikkel, who created the program. I also have a discount code, Warrior, for 10% off, but I would be recommending this program regardless of whether or not I have that. It is just, in my opinion, the best program out there at the moment for developing the pressed handstand. So in summary, make sure the traps are strong, do the prep work, do the accessory work of the support pike slides and the handstand trap through raise. Then a couple of times a week, focus on accumulating volume with press negatives and box presses. A mixture of the two or both will work really, really well, whilst also developing that pancake flexibility and making sure your shoulders are strong. I would guarantee that if you do this and you're consistent about it, you will make results. But that being said, I understand it is not too complicated and there may be other things that I have missed that you also might want to share. So if there is a drill that you think I've missed out that I have included, or if you want to let me know if you have found this video helpful, whether it's now or 6 months from now when you get a pressed handstand, let me know in the comment section down below. As always, if you just enjoyed this video, you can hit that thumbs up button and support the channel. Right next to it is that subscribe button. If you want to join the Bodyweight Warrior Tribe, don't miss out on any more future videos. But that's basically been it for this week, guys. I'll catch you in the next episode. Have a strong week and peace.